Africa.
We do have some more breaking news related to the Iran war. This is by Fox News right here, saying breaking: Trump speaking with Fox News' Trey Yingst threatens that Iran will be, quote, blown off the face of the earth if the Islamic Republic attacks U.S. ships guiding vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. So that is some new developments as we continue to track all of the breaking news. We had just brought you this breaking news moments ago that the U.S. military says it has sunk 6 Iranian small boats that were targeting civilian vessels in the latest test of the ceasefire. Admiral Brad Cooper, who heads U.S. Central Command, said U.S. military helicopters have sunk 6 Iranian small boats that were targeting civilian vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, the latest test of this ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. Admiral Cooper said the U.S. military has been able to clear a pathway in the Strait of Hormuz that is free of any Iranian mines in an effort to allow commercial vessels to transit the waterway. He said the U.S. military also has set up a defensive umbrella that includes American helicopters and fighter planes to protect the freighters leaving the strait. But we continue to follow the very latest developments as President Trump now ramping up rhetoric, saying that he will blow Iran off the face of the earth should there be any sort of retaliation on Iran's behalf. All of this comes as the United Arab Emirates said earlier today that it came under attack by Iran for the first time since this ceasefire took hold in early April. Those attacks appeared to be in response to President Trump's latest efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Hello, my name is Ernie Poindexter. I'm the founder, chief editor, and publisher at NOWAFRICA News. Today I want to respond to how the crisis is unraveling in the Middle East. I think we can all agree that it's a diplomatic nightmare. I think it's tremendously arrogant to tell a sovereign nation how to run their affairs, then you threaten them, threaten to blow them up, and then try to negotiate a ceasefire peace agreement. I mean, what kind of politics is that? At the same time, we're looking at oil getting to $114 a barrel and supply chain disruptions literally around the corner. On a more positive note, Africa is going through an oil boom, and oil is literally being found all over the continent. So what we're seeing there is a potential stabilization while the world actually goes into a shock. So stay tuned with NOWAFRICA News. We're going to give you the latest and greatest global developments happening around the world. Take care and thank you.
Thank you for joining us. African oil is once again quoting more interest than usual as volatility in the Gulf continues. Unlike crude from the Middle East, a lot of African oil does not have to transit vulnerable corridors such as the Strait of Hormuz, where events such as war can put a stop to shipping. But years of constrained investment means African producers cannot pump more and fast enough to cover gaps in global supply.
The disruption of oil and gas flows through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical point through which 20% of global oil trade passes, has triggered sharp price spike and exposed the vulnerability of supply chains. Seen from a different angle, the crisis could be a strategic positive for African producers. The continent's biggest producers are largely insulated from the Gulf crisis, meaning crude from Nigeria, Algeria, Angola, Libya, or Egypt can reach buyers in Europe and Asia with fewer geopolitical risks compared to shipment from the Gulf.
So that's an important point right there that we need to highlight. While the world was depending on the Strait of Hormuz and the oil oligarchs in the Middle East, now there's a new global shift where now, to include Europe and Asia, they're going to depend on Africa for oil supply. This is huge, and it's just a travesty that there's not more discussion about this. But let's continue.
Higher prices also mean bigger revenues for government. Except African producers struggled to drastically scale up crude output. Climate policies, security assessment, and domestic political agendas, especially in Europe, have slowed or starved oil and gas projects in Uganda, Mozambique, and other countries of investment. For African governments, this means higher financing costs and project delays, which impede African oil from becoming a sufficient alternative for global supply.
Carol Nachle is an energy expert and CEO of Crystal Energy. Thank you very much, madam, for your time. Just how significant an alternative is African oil in times like these?
Every barrel that is produced outside the Middle East at the moment plays a significant role, let alone from Africa, where we have established important producers, North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. And also they export LNG, and because we also saw not just disruption in terms of oil, but also in terms of gas and liquefied natural gas in particular. So every single barrel matters a lot to ease the pressure on global prices. So definitely there is a huge importance that oil production and gas production in Africa will play in terms of easing the pressure on prices. And I think if we did not have producers such as those in Africa, we would have seen prices going much higher than the levels we have seen since the start of the crisis.
There is a crisis now. How fast can African producers scale up to cover the gaps in global supply?
I doubt there is a capacity to simply open the tap and produce more. This is the reality of conventional oil production, unlike shale production in the US, which is much more responsive to prices. And also from history especially over the last few years, we saw that African producers, including those that are members of OPEC, struggled to increase production because of previous years of limited investment. So I don't think African oil and gas producers will be just able to simply open the tap and increase production. That will take a while to materialize. But this is something for the region's producers to think in the future, going forward, about how to maintain and attract investment, sufficient investment in the sector to increase production capacity. Because I think in the continent there is much more potential, much more reserves available than what the continent is currently producing.
Considering what's happening now, would you say it was a mistake, especially for European lenders, to refuse to invest in African oil and gas projects?
Let me put it this way. I think it was perhaps simplistic to believe that we did not need oil and gas investment when demand is still growing. I think we should leave it to every nation to decide what to do with their own resources domestically, whether to produce them or not. That said, there is an element of truth there, because when you look at oil production across the continent, it is not the least carbon intensive production, and that is because perhaps of more relaxed environmental rules or more lenient enforcement of environmental rules. You still see gas flaring as a wide practice across the continent. So perhaps we cannot just blame it in terms of what Western powers want to achieve in terms of climate change, but I think it could be a good incentive for the African governments to reconsider the investment climate in their country from an environmental perspective, because it's only good to reduce the carbon intensity from, even if you don't believe in climate change, it gives you a competitive edge.
What and how much investment needs to happen to make African oil a sufficient alternative?
I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not going to throw a figure at you, because we never looked at it this way. But just immediately, I think that it will take a lot, partly because of the resource scale. I mean, the Middle East really is very difficult to find a near competitor to the Middle East in terms of the volumes. What experience tells us that what you have in the ground does not necessarily dictate production. Africa cannot compete in terms of reserve, but maybe they can compete in terms of production should the above ground conditions be conducive for investment.
Carol Nachle, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Let me just comment on that, because there was a few things that were said that I think was really just colonial nonsense. Let me give you a perfect example. They said that the West didn't invest in Africa because they were stealing. They didn't invest because they could just steal pillage, and rob Africa. So there was no need to invest to produce more oil. The other thing I don't like is this European bias that they have. She says that Africa doesn't have the reserves, but it has the production capacity for oil. That makes no sense. Africa has the most oil, and you're going to sort of blindside the conversation by saying reserves. Africa is discovering new oil every single day. So the reality is that there's going to be a global shift, and the world is going to get ready to start in the next maybe 5 years, probably even sooner than that. The world is going to depend on Africa as the Middle East fizzles out with this war with the United States. So this is why they're saying there's an oil boom happening in Africa, and a lot of people don't really know about it.
We will lead and we'll make sure that that refinery is built within the next 4 or 5 years.
Wow, that's great.
We are discussing that we're going to have a joint refinery in Tanga to benefit all of us, because that refinery is going to take on board the oil from DRC, the oil from Kenya, the oil from South Sudan, the oil from Uganda, and we will just need to build a short pipeline from Tanga to Mombasa, and the finished product will use the pipeline that we already jointly own with Uganda. So all our assets become profitable.
My commitment today here is that if we agree with the 3-4 governments here about the refinery, we will lead and we'll make sure that that refinery is built within the next 4 or 5 years.
Yay! And that's all for today's update. If you found this video helpful or informative, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to stay ahead with the latest updates, insights, and breaking developments, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about this situation? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.